And so it is. Beloved weavers of worlds, brilliant bringers of love, of joy, and of freedom. Welcome, 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 welcome to this moment, which no longer can be identified as the dawning of a new age, indeed, but as the sunrise of the new age. And before you go, 12, because yes, that is who we are sitting here in front of you today. Before you go, 12, you're talking about the new age? We thought that you didn't fall for that type of marketing and merchandise. Well, yes, we don't. But it can also not be denied that we sit in one. And then we are not referring to indeed the rather awkward and somewhat inappropriate expressions of the so-called New Age that you have been muddling through since the 1960s or what have you, leading you beyond the inevitable 2012 point where the whole bubble collapsed and you felt as though you were thrown back on your own devices. We have explained this in our previous message, The Final Portal, and many others have been here since to complicate matters. Many of you have written in and said, 12, we felt so uplifted by your message. It was so brilliant and so wonderful. And then Imzaia came. And we're still trying to make sense of it. Well, yes, but that was exactly the point. Let that fiery breath of that old dragon wash away, burn away, wipe away all of those things that are finite, all of those things that you considered the laws of physics, the laws of reality, the finite ways of being, the grand illusions, all of these things, to make space for a return to the permanent. Because, yes, indeed, there have been rather deep and complex messages, but also very recently, the Pakwan Yinsan released a very brief little article called Can You Imagine This?, in which she invited you to imagine a creative power, a creative language, if you will, and took you through the very simple steps of that manifestation. And in that message, she spoke of the energy body, for lack of a better word, the energy body to be a type of instrument that you can play, can learn or remember how to play. And if you connect what she said in that article to her recent meditation that Imzaia labeled for you as the Daka principle, then you can begin to see how simple what has been shared so far truly is. You see, a big part of the problem that has been, and that made it difficult, more difficult than it is now, for many to find their way to the expression of reality creation is not only the entanglement that has been recently explained to you on the tachyonic level, but also simply the entanglement here of your states of feeling, your unconditional feelings, which we have described to you as unstructured so long ago. You may as well say unconditional. Love, joy, freedom. I do not need to repeat them, nor does anyone else in this company here today. But those states, very simple states, which here in your day-to-day descent, as it has been before the counter movement began, into this echorrhea, your descent into the vibrational, you made those feelings conditional. You turned them into emotional states which, as you know, were dependent on separated things to which your mind wanted to move closer or wanted to move further away from, as we have explained over the years. So if you look at those base feelings that every human comes into the world with, then you could say that that complexity of states, of conditional natures, which then become emotions and which then become thoughts and that sort of thing, are like using your headphones, your earphones in your modern smartphone devices, the ones that are still using the cables, you know, and you entangle the cable and you plug them into your ear and you plug them into your phone, and for a moment you have a clarity of sound. But the moment somebody wants to speak to you, you take the earphones out, and even if it takes 1 second, you'll be damned when you look down, and the whole thing is clustered up again in a way that seems physically impossible. And yet, there it is. Takes you 3 hours to disentangle the damn thing again before you can continue listening and you have another moment of clarity. Well, this is how pretty much it has been with your emotional states over the years. Sometimes your instrument, your energy body, accidentally really lined up, and an actual note came out that you wanted to listen to, that you wanted to express, and then again it was gone. As Imzaia has said years and years ago, a type of non-permanent portal that would keep flickering in and out of existence, that sometimes would allow love and joy and freedom and truth and these sorts of things through. But very quickly again, like your earphones, would become entangled, would become a cluster, a mess, once again, that it seemed impossible to weave your way out of, to get through that day or that year or that moment even, whatever it is. That's the state that you have been in. But that's only because you did not know, or at least did not want to accept, because we have been telling you for the past 20 years, that there are very simple principles behind the whole damn thing, behind all of that complexity, principles that when you learn how to play them, how to navigate them, it really is no different than picking up your energy body like you would pick up this flute that is lying here, and you place your fingers on the flute in a certain way that you very quickly can get the hang of. And you know that by moving your fingers on and off the openings, you can produce certain sounds. Simple. And your energy body is no more difficult than that, once you accept that the flow of sun and applying it, as we have been telling you for so many years, and we'll go into it again in a minute, is not a type of control or a type of ordering, simply because you are already in a state of disorganization with these things due to the descent into the emotional states. So it really is about harmonizing your instrument. That's what is needing to happen now. And what that means is that, much like your fingers on the flute, the experiences known as love and joy and freedom and truth and life and gratitude and grace and well-being, these permanent states of being, must be organized, placed correctly in your energy body environment, which has been explained again recently by Imzaia in Kutumi and by the Pleiades as to how this organizational principle truly works. The harmony, as you have been told, occurs when you become aware of the 3 chakra system. And you must remember the numbers 3, 6, and 9, and also 12, are going to be coming back in this particular presentation quite a bit. So you have the 3 chakra system, which was explained to you recently, is beyond time and space, unlike the chakra system, which exists in vibrational space and time. The chakra system, threefold, each sphere can be cut up into 4 quadrants, what you would consider north, east, south, and west, if you will, but 1, 2, 3, and 4. Of course, if you think about it, 3 times 4 quadrants, that's 12, which once again is a 3. Just remember these structures for later. It means, however, that the cutting up of your quadrants or your spheres of the chakras into quadrants produces the holographic state of the full chakra again. So even though you are only working here in this area and in the back areas with only, and here in the front, with only a quarter of your full sphere, you are technically working with the full chakra system in each quarter of the quadrant of each sphere. But that is a bit of a technical note. It becomes important later on. But once you organize through that principle, which of course requires the understanding and the acceptance that the states we are talking about, love, joy, freedom, etc., are not things that happen to you. They don't happen to you. They don't come about because of a happenstance or because of a person or because of a thing or because of a thought or because of an insight or anything. They are permanently there. They are there before time and space is even there in which you can experience these states. So they are not things that you need to go out and seek out, that you need to go out in search of in your world, in your vibrational expression. They are states that you must accept are always there. That also means that if they're always there, anything else isn't always there. That means that the states of emotions, of feeling good, happy, or feeling bad, grief, any of this, the states of feeling imprisoned or feeling free because you can run through a field, these states are not permanent. They come and they go. So it means that to truly accept that these building blocks are always there and that you need to place them around you, if you will, in your energy body in a certain way, that you no longer have the room, we're very sorry, for the drama and for the pain and for the mental stuff and for the limitations and the conditions or any of that. It's either this system, the Sankara system, or it's the Savok system. You cannot run both at the same time. You can switch from one to the other very quickly, constantly throughout the day, which is the flickering of this portal that we were talking about before. But you cannot run both at the same time. Once you begin to accept that and you drop everything else, and you learn that basically everything else in your life is an inverted, twisted up, entangled, knotted up, earphones, remember, version of these basic permanent things, then you can begin to unpack that and untangle that and bring them back to where they belong. To the love, joy, freedom, life, order, love, joy, freedom, truth, order that exists in the first chakra, the life, gratitude, grace, well-being order that exists in the second chakra, through which your own elemental forces flow constantly and consistently. It means that by organizing these states in such a way, you become permeable. You become open to expression. You are no longer in a position where the emotional field, the mental field, or anything else at that point can still be activated or triggered. So this gives you the space to move into the Lin point, the point of true and one consciousness, where the only point that is real, if you will, in this entire experience. And you can escape that repetition and that delusion that otherwise is your script, is your playbook. Once you organize the principles, the active ingredients in this fashion, in the sequence of love, joy, freedom, truth, life, gratitude, grace, and well-being through the first two chakras, this unlocks your access to your own principles, the very personal ones that exist in the third chakra. It also takes every single active ingredient, again, as we've said just now, out of the realm of the finiteness, and it is only in that sequence, when played that way, that it becomes possible for the states to occur as explained in the exercise of the Daka principle. In other words, love as a first point in the first chakra, in the first quadrant, when placed there, and when seen as a permanent state that literally makes up your beingness, that you carry around as part of yourself, you make it part of your own DNA, if I may say it like that for a second. When you do that, that is when love can generate the awareness of a moment that has nothing that comes before it and nothing that comes after it, you see. Only when it is carried as your own, only when it is seen as part of your being and something that you express through in order to generate your experiences, the permutations and things that we will come to later, only then can Da truly show you that there is nothing that comes before and nothing that comes after, simply by allowing you to see what you think of as a string of endless moments stitched together in linear time, as a fullness of one eternal moment. Only when Da, when love, is placed there, and it can allow the life force, it can allow the elemental forces to move into its next state of expression, which is Ba, which is joy, for instance. Only in that moment it becomes truly possible to see with the mind of Sankara rather than Savok that this entire experience that you've had here has truly happened outside of any time or outside of any space. In other words, this entire experience, whether it is the duration of your life so far, or whether it is you contemplating the duration of the age of planet Earth itself, or of the galaxy or the universe itself, any of these contemplations of linear time, all happened, that's all in the same moment. That is the one moment. All of time and space, as it was shown here the other day as the field of Lavat, is one and the same moment. You experience this one and the same moment as an enormous passing of time, which already seems long if you just think about your lifetime. But think about the lifetime of stars and galaxies and the universe itself. Billions of years, you imagine. And yet, all that has ever happened within that one moment is the rising up and the falling away of shape and of form and of light, and the elements Oh, Ah, Eh, and I that have been described recently again. All that has happened in this one moment is these permutations of Da, Ba, Va, Ra, etc., that have risen up, that have been grounded, that have been given light in order to form shadow too, that have been given breath, that have been given air, and that have been given all of these things. The very things that manifest through the elementals. Really that simple. One moment, much like Plato's cave, or like a shadow play that children like to watch with the sticks. All of that, the coming and going of shapes and forms and interactions between those things. But no true passage of time, because there is no time to pass, truly, and no true manifestation of space, because you have been explained how consciousness creates that virtual space and that virtual time. So that means that from the perspective of the student that you are in Honomeia, the duration of these ekarayas is brief. Mere moments, you could say. Much like it was when the Egyptians tried to recreate the same technology through their pyramids, through using the queen's chamber in order for the light to pass, the abandonment, if you will, of all things worldly, in the willingness, in the true desire to know the one creator. That's what the queen's chamber was all about for the Egyptian that was initiated. It is a death of the ego self and the rebirth of the creator self within the body. It is the state that is being described here in these last recent messages. That is what remains when you move these permanent states in the sequence that is described, and you untangle them. You harmonize them. There is so much that we can say about this still, but probably what is very important to understand is that therefore your physical senses matter very little to this stage of consciousness you are now in. They ultimately now function merely similar to your computer screens or your television screens, where you can see the movie play out or the program or the game play out that has been programmed in the state of sankhara, in the permutations of the Lin point. The senses of sight and all of those are merely that. You can see it, you can hear it, you can touch it, you can smell it in some unfortunate cases, but sometimes it can be a good thing. But that is merely an ultimate playing out, a repetition, if you will, a publication of what you have permutated and what you have allowed to permeate through you. The permeation, as we just explained, happens because of the harmonization of placing these sensations in this particular way in your energy body and learning to ground through it, through flow through it, to breathe through it, to light up through it, using the elemental states that flow, that you allow to flow at any given time. Yeah, so those are the options, really. You can either play the old game, the old system, which is not only a repeat of everything you have already known, but will become, with each passing moment and each passing hour and each passing day, a true déjà vu experience, the likes of which you have never before encountered in your life. A true experience of disassociation, because your now moment will come to the fore. You now think that your now moment is the so-called second by second now moment, but we have always told you that that technically is the past, just out of phase, as you have seen recently, with the true now moment, the eternal now, where the permutation of the creator self is using the permanent states to generate reality. Yeah. So you are going to feel very inclined to place your consciousness at the level that is now possible, because that is where your true eternal now will be. Your true gravity point, if I may say so, that is where it will be placed, or has already been placed. It is for that very reason that all of the old energy things, all of the tools that you once used are now pretty useless, even though they're still fun to play with. Much like you still sometimes like to take out your Monopoly box or your Road of Life game or Game of Life or whatever you call it, and these really old games that you used to play as a child. They don't feel the same anymore, though. They don't bring you that same excitement than they did as a child. And that is going to be the same with your tarot and your numerology and your astrology and all of these things, even though they too are indicating now that you truly have moved into this new age, that you have moved from the dawn into the sunrise. That dawn, you know, where it is sort of light and sort of dark, the twilight, where you can't really say that you can see with clarity, and where you still sort of want to stay in bed, that time is over. The sunrise is here. The light is hitting you. It's coming right out of you. Therefore, you're going to be inclined to place your consciousness where it now belongs. But all of that, we are sure, will become clear over time as this Creator Manifest continues. One thing that for those of you that wish to begin to play this instrument of yours and that wish to begin practicing it, that is very good to know, is some updated information on the concept of your so-called 3, 6, and 9 mystery. Many of you know of its importance, but very few, if any, know of its origin and know of its true function. Recently, we asked the Pak Yin to take a little sojourn through the world of YouTube and through the world of your internet to see what was out there about it. And all that kept coming back, mostly at least, is of course Nikola Tesla, who vaguely introduced, the concept, again, after it having been already introduced in other work, in Greek times and before, of course, but who never got specific on the matter. And unfortunately, what has happened since is that two very brilliant pieces of information have gotten entangled in a way that is negative for both pieces. Because if you look up Nikola Tesla and his information on 369 in the public domain these days, all that you will be thrown at, that you will find, is vortex mathematics. Now, vortex mathematics is in itself a very interesting principle. It teaches systems of free energy that come natural in the universal setup of your laws of physics by teaching that in the number sequence of 1 up until 9, the 3, the 6, and the 9 are technically placed outside of the field of manifestation of the 1, the 2, the 4, the 5, the 7, and the 8. If you look up vortex mathematics, you will see that there is an eternal sequence flowing through these other numbers, which looks very much like an infinity sign in a way. And behind it is a triangle of the 3, the 6, and the 9. If you look at the flow between these numbers, the other numbers in vortex mathematics, in the energy flow, if you create indeed even machines that can generate electricity and energy from them, you will see that this flow between 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, and 8 is constantly going, and that each time they connect, they ultimately create a 3 or a 6, but never a 9. The 9 is lifted even further out of that field. Now, all of that you can easily find on your YouTube these days, and if you want to learn more about vortex mathematics, I invite you, we all do, to do so. It is very interesting to do, but it won't take you far when you want to understand the true meaning of the 3, the 6, and the 9. Let's just say that they are accidentally connected, these two theories, these two principles, because ultimately everything can be connected to the principle that Tesla was talking about. We can look at some theory of a psychologist who has written books on the mind, and you can apply the 3, the 6, and the 9 to that and make complete sense of it. It works with everything in nature because it is so fundamental. But it is fundamental in another way than people today understand. And Nikola Tesla did understand. Because many people already mislabel him these days. They think he was a physicist, or they think he was a scientist, or they think he was an engineer. Some think he was a philosopher, or maybe all of those things. But no, he only affected those fields with his creations and with his thinking, because truly, just like all of you, Tesla is a metaphysicist and a metaphysician. One to do with the description that we have given of the permanent states here, and the other to do with how those descriptions, how those permanent states affect the energy body here. That is his true calling. He, throughout his lifetime, brought in every piece of information that he ever produced through automatic writing. And we are not going to go deeper into which beings connected to him. There's already enough ego between all 12 of us here. But let us just say that it was one of us, just as in many other places when information is requested, we are present. He, through his automatic writing, through his dream states, and through all of these things, learned for himself, like any other sage ever could do, about the energy body, about the harmonization of the system, about the permanent states that exist beyond time and space, and how to bring those states into functioning here. And this is where the third and the sixth and the ninth come in. Tesla never referred to the numbers 1, 2, 3 and onward in the same way than most mathematicians do. At best, mathematicians think that these states are maybe forces of nature, maybe some type of geometrical position, but never does anyone assume that these are conscious beings we are talking about. And that when you think of the number 1, forget about the 0, because that's not real, that's never been real, and it's mainly the reason why your mathematics these days are not going to work to produce multidimensional equations properly without abandoning that point, especially the way 0 is looked at. But that's for another time. If somebody wants to know about that, ask the question, and we will go deeper into it. But forget about the 0, just look at the numbers 1, 2, 9. When you look at those, you see abstract equations, abstract ideas. We are telling you that beyond time and space, these are actually the beings that you know as Da, Ba, etc. And that indeed, therefore, there aren't but 9, as your limited mathematics would like you to believe, but there are 12 bays, of which you create uniquely for each of you. It is why Tesla was unable to properly write down his theories about the 3, the 6, and the 9. Because you only have a universal theory of everything up to number 8, up to those ingredients. And that's where your personal touch comes in, as the creator self and the creator whole. So at that point, the theory becomes indescribable, because then it becomes a personal journey. But 2 things Tesla realized very quickly about the 3, the 6, and the 9. First, when looking at the Lin point, where the so-called permutations of permanence are taking place, it becomes very clear very quickly that these permutations organize around the 3, 6, 9 principle. In other words, there's a sequence of 12 permutations each time to generate the burst and the birth through the Lin point of a point in geometry. This means that when permutations of the states of Da, Ba, Va, Ra begin, and permutations don't mean that they constantly have to happen in that sequence, they are in all the sequences that they can be put together in. Da can be put in Do, in Di, you have all these different states that have been described recently. So all of these are happening. But as they are permutating, the first permutation and the second permutation always collapses into the third. The third permutation is a manifestation of the first two permutations. The sixth one is the same. The sixth one is a collapsing of the fourth and the fifth. 7 and 8 are permutations of the third and the sixth in different states of itself. And the ninth point, which is your own private, the first personal point of manifestation, of permutation, of permanence, all of these things. The ninth is the coming together, is the true point of the 3 and the 6 point. So, in a way, as these permutations are happening, there never is a real permutation from 1 to 8. There is only essentially the ninth permutation, that is the actual permutation that occurs, which generates permutation 1 to 8 before its own existence, before its own permutation becomes present. And it is that permutation which, in the sequencing of 10 and 11, generate the pulse that is the 12th permutation, which then places the point of geometry in your vibrational space. Now, it will take a bit of time for you to understand this properly, or to be able at least to repeat it, because it's not difficult. You just have to think of the ninth permutation in the sequence of 12 as the original Pa permutation, which by its manifestation in the permutations generates the first 8 permutations, in which exist the 3 and the 6, which is ultimately the manifestation of the ninth, which then builds up through 2 points which become important later to generate the 12th permutation of these ones that have happened, which is then the manifestation or the publication into your Lavat space. You see? That doesn't mean that points 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, and 8, and even 10 and 11 are unimportant. No, they're vital in playing that instrument, but they are not the ones that are ultimately used in creative force. Those are only the 3rd, the 6th, and the 9th point that combine into the 12th permutation that then birth your reality. All right? That's one thing. The other thing that is very important that Tesla very quickly understood when you talk about 3, 6, and 9, 9 being the first of your own 4 personal sand points, is that the only way to generate your access, at least, to point 9 is 3 and 6. Now, in this sequence throughout your chakra system, Da, Ba, Va, that's the 3rd one, that's the state of freedom. Ra, Ka, Sa, that's the 6th. That's the state of gratitude. So, in order for you to find these states that you are looking for to complete the sequence of the instrument known as your energy body, you need to journey through the 3rd state and the 6th state of the being. You have to play, in other words, the 3rd note and the 6th note, which when organized The third note, Va, exists here at the back left of you, of your head, if you will. Da, Ba, Fa, Ra, Ka, Sa. Sa being the sixth point that exists behind you on the right. It is in these two spaces, if you will, that you can find your access into point 9, 10, 11, and 12. To remember those. But it is also important in the exercise that Katumi gave you the so-called amuse-bouche of recently. Because when you are looking at the infinometry symbol, when you are looking at that state of creator consciousness, which is literally what you are generating outside of this holographic training reality that we were speaking about earlier. And remember, you really are only generating this for a few brief moments. From the Honomea perspective, you are only in here for a few brief moments. But from the consciousness perspective that has created the infinometry to enter the Ekoraya, you could be in here for thousands and thousands and thousands of millennia, or for a few seconds if you were to be, I don't know, space baby or something like that. That immediately just finds enlightenment like that. It is possible. There are no limitations to the program. And again, it was rather difficult in the old energy world for the sages and everyone that did find this pathway and that did find this permanent observation of reality to maintain it due to the tsunamis of energy waves and cascading effects of vibrational sequences that created your reality. Very, very difficult. But all of that is gone now. Even the states, as we said at the beginning, that you generate in the form of drama, and all of these things only require not the disentanglement that it may have required in old energy times, where you could get so stuck in an expressed experience that it really did become a sort of prison, one that nobody else could understand but yourself, because you were the one that placed yourself in it. But now, those states are no longer permanent in the sense that you can no longer stay stuck, or they can no longer appear permanent. Because that is, of course, what the mind likes to do. It likes to copy the creative ability of consciousness. So, putting you in a place of, let's say, physical pain. Some of you probably have recently experienced physical pain again. Many do. On a day-to-day basis even, but when you're in it, it feels like it's all there is and you've been experiencing it forever, and when you're out of it, it feels like it just took a little second, or it barely meant anything to your current consciousness, which is now beyond that expression, has progressed beyond it, and is now expressing a different experience. You see? So that now becomes easily possible. There is no such thing anymore as a necessity to operate on Savok, to operate on the ego, mind, personality. None. And on top of that, as we were speaking about your old energy tools a while ago, that which you used to wait for, that which you used to travel towards, whether it is your 1111 portal or your solstices, or your gatherings that meant something on special dates or anything like that, or waiting for a beautiful moment to arrive in your reality that meant something, all of that, gone, meaningless now. So yes, of course, while you could still celebrate the 1111 portal and the 88 portal, and soon, if you would like to, the 1212 portal, that's all fine, but you're not really celebrating anything that you're traveling through any longer. Because linear time and linear space simply do not mean the same thing than they did a few days ago. It's all about expression and progression now. It's all about that. It's no longer about waiting for the right moment, waiting for the inevitable, whatever. It is always now. Now is always the best moment. Now is always the best time, because now it is always accessible and it is always available. And once your instrument has been tuned to place these states not as happenstances, not as occurrences, not as something you seek out, but as permanent states that make up your being, then it will begin to affect everything. Your emotions will fade away and your feelings will remain. Your thoughts, your spoken thoughts, if you will, where you're constantly bitching towards yourself, if you will, those thoughts, and you're always murmuring about something that you're observing or seeing around you, or you're always trying to remember something or forget something or whatever, those will fade away. And what will remain will be the creative thoughts, the song. There will be no need for these things if you decide to follow this principle. And this is what Tesla, to get back to that, knew. That all of this old energy nonsense, that all of this fixed, supposedly unchangeable type of existence was meaningless ultimately. And everything he did in his life, and he became quite obsessed with it, was to find ways to manifest these permutations, this third, this sixth, and this ninth permutation in his life. It is why people describe him these days as having had OCD. Because he did things 3 times in a row, or 6 times in a row, or 9 times in a row. Correct, checking calculations, from washing his hands to inviting friends over in the brief times in his life that he actually had those. It made it very difficult for people to understand him, because they were literally in another reality and observing the same field than he was, but from a completely different point of consciousness, which has happened to many of you over the years as you mingle and try to place yourself into the world without becoming of the world. He sought solitude. You don't have that option today anymore, because there is no such thing. There is only reciprocity. There is only togetherness. There is only the acceptance of the state of sankhara. And if you remember what Adamus told you several months ago, an extreme masklessness that is occurring, where all of these games and all of these facades and all of these vibrational things that you could hide behind are falling away. It is not because you don't hear the information here presented about Sankara, for instance, that you will not feel the deja vu state or all of these things that we were talking about earlier. Anyone will experience it because it is the new system that is running here. And that is why ultimately everything that anyone thinks, from the world of politics to the world of business to the world of what have you, science, anything that people think is going on really is no longer truly going on, has become utterly meaningless. And this society will have to find a way to organize itself and to harmonize itself according to the same principles that we have been describing here recently. Because much like, and this is why Lemuria was the way it was, much like your flow of your energy body needs to be harmonized in order to manifest in the way that we have described now, so it is, as above, so below, the microscopic and the macroscopic, so it is for the larger energy body, if you will, that you are all together as human beings. In Lemuria, these permanent states was the only thing that mattered. As you existed there, as you began your journey there, which was not per se as a baby like it is now, unless you chose to manifest like that, which few did, of course. But as you started there, your first quest was to find these ingredients that we have been talking about, the last 4, and also then, once you did, because when you do, you will see that those 4 are mainly focused on one of the existing 8 ingredients. When you did, you would naturally join what now you describe as the council of love or joy, but don't think of it as councils like your United Nations or anything like that. It was more, that was the function you took on in the world, in society. That doesn't mean that if you ended up focusing mainly on love as the flow that you brought to society, that you had no access to love or joy or anything else, and that was all separated. No, of course not. But in a way, you were responsible for manifesting that flow. And I know this sounds abstract. We all feel a little bit limited today here in the words that we can find in an attempt to explain all of this. That is also why we didn't organize the entire Creator Manifest as one class, but as a diamond, if you will, of classes, all of which are attempting to point at the same thing, namely at you. Namely at you. Not you who is here, not you who thinks that they are an ego mind personality, but you. The you that is experiencing all of this in a brief moment of time. It is why you do so many of these ekurayas, because from your perspective in class, in Honomeia, it is not as though you are sent away for 70, 80 years. Even the concept of 70, 80 years or time or space, again, is meaningless there. It is something that every time you come out of these ekurayas, you don't even understand how you could have believed it. You don't. When you get in here, you don't believe that it is possible to believe things are finite and everything else you believe. And when you're in here, it is so hard to believe that the things that we are saying are true and that these permanent states are the only ones that really exist. And that is how it was for a long time, but not anymore. Not anymore. It is high time to close down this little chat and for you to go and explore these things. We have touched upon the idea of this instrument. It is time to begin to play it. Playing it literally means working with these states. This is why it was always possible, even in old energy times, even in the time of night, before the dawn and before this sunrise led to the birth of this new age, it was possible. Because all it takes is to consider these states permanent, to consider these feelings, love, joy, freedom, truth, life, gratitude, grace, and well-being as the only things that make up your body, your thoughts, your being, your mind, your clothes, your chair, your house, your world, your universe. It is possible, but it requires, and it has always been, but it required consistency and continuity. That consistency and that continuity is now underlying the technology, if you will, that you use to manifest these Ekurayas. So falling off the wagon, falling into mind, is possible and might happen, but it is also meaningless and does not retract from what you built up. And that was very different in the past. The consistency and the continuity needed to literally be consistent and continuous, literally, without one stitch misstitched or unstitched again or whatever, in order to achieve the completion of the song and the manifestation or the expression of experience or the ascension or the enlightenment or whatever. But now, because the system is no longer chakra-based, it is kakra-based, you are dealing with permanent states of expression all the time. So through the kakra system, whatever you add from the permutations is permanent. And whatever you choose to experience from the field of savok, from the field of mind, is immediately meaningless and erased as, in a way, corrupt data that cannot be stored in the larger system, if you will. So that is what there is to explore now. And as we have said, now that you have passed through this final portal, and you are beginning to understand the need to let go of all these old tools and all these old things because they have become literally meaningless, it is not about discarding what was beautiful about them. Because remember, the final portal has only led to a permanent portal. A permanent portal which essentially is here, the heart space, the akene. But because of that, also the heart of every particle, every person, everything, every event, everything in this reality. And that is simply the truth. This permanent portal brings through these permanent states permanently. And even if you ignore it, it will continue to tap you on the shoulder, to guide you, to wake you up, and to put you back on track, without having to start at the very beginning. Because no matter what the song says, that is no fucking way to start, over and over again. Having said all of this, and written down nothing of it, so what am I pointing at? I know, guys, I know. Having said all of that, we want to, at the request of Gaia, give her a closing moment in this class. We will be back right after. Hi! Hi! It's Gayamala! And I endorse this message. Bye now! Well, that just happened. We don't quite know what to say about it, other than apparently Gaia is still on the rocks. Blessed beings, we thank you for spending this time together. We look forward to you discovering more about this, the fairy tale that you have played. Who are the actors behind the tale? And to realizing that many of those are you. Next time we speak, we will begin to incorporate into our conversations the consciousness, if you will, of the independent active ingredients that you know of as Da and Ba, so that they will have the opportunity to deliver you their presence and their wisdom directly. Because once again, as we have told you before, these are expressions of consciousness. In fact, they are consciousness compared to the agents of consciousness, as people like to call it these days in science, that you can project into here. But we'll leave that up for another time. There are plenty of others in the meantime that have yet to speak and to share these next steps with you. Again, this is the time to play with this, to practice with it, to explore it to the fullest. And once again, as it has been said by others, this is the time for pure and full abandonment. This is the time for tomfoolery. This is the time for the fool to step off the cliff, metaphorically, and to see the metaphysical world that awaits the first footstep beyond that so-called finite end of the field of experience that so far you have found yourself in. Beloved Imzaia, today might have been a slightly different approach to our normal conversations with you. We hope that you appreciated it. We hope that you will be with us again soon, and that in the meantime you are going to rock it like Gaia. Without wasting any more words, we hope you feel our love and all these other permanent states that we are singing to you right now. And so it is.